Morning guys, welcome to the shop. So today, first of a two-part series I'm going to do on fabricating brake lines. Not the whole thing in this particular case, just the last sort of foot or so of it, but the original fittings had completely rusted through. This has had to be actually cut off the vehicle to extract it from the brackets that hold the spring and rubber hose and so on in place. And I'm going to be replacing just enough of the pipe to get me onto a nice straight length inside, just past the wheel arch. So, a few things we need to consider. First things first, the tools that we're going to be using this particular exercise. We need a piece of string, I'll come to that in a moment. We need a pipe cutter, and we need some duct tape, but I'll come to all that shortly. So, first thing we need to do, let's figure out how long this piece of pipe actually is. Now, I've had to cut the ends off. I'm going to have to flare them, so I'm going to give myself another 1.5 inches thereabouts on the end before we start, and then it's just a matter of bending it along. Use the piece of string. I've used this same piece of string for years. Too lazy to cut a fresh one. There we go, another bit on the end. So that is the size that we need, nice and easy. Now I will, when I'm cutting it, go a little bit more generous than that, just to give myself a little bit of extra wriggle room when I'm doing the flaring. That'll be video part 2. So, next thing is to select the pipe. Now there are effectively 3 types of pipe available. There is copper pipe, pure copper, which is okay for fuel lines, and the rules for bending and so on, the tips here are all exactly the same, but there's a consideration when you're doing this for brakes that I'll come to in a sec. There is cunifer, which is a mixture of copper, Cu, nickel, Ni, and iron, Fe, so cunifer, and then there is what I'm going to be using, which is cupronickel. A little bit harder, a few tricks you might need to soften it up for flaring. I'll show you that in part 2. This one is 90% copper, 10% nickel. The reason I'm using this one is because of road salt where I'm living. Hell of a lot of road salt in the winter, and the iron in cunifer, whilst it's much reduced, is still impacted. So for me, I'm using a pipe here that's guaranteed against the effects of weather and seasonal road salt. Now, the consideration I mentioned earlier about not just using copper, which whilst it's a lot easier to work, is a lot weaker. Thing to note when you're buying these things is the safe working pressure. So, same size pipe, 3/16 of an inch, 4.76 millimeter, but the safe working pressure of pure copper is 1841 psi. It's 127 bar. Safe working pressure of cunifer or pure cupronickel is 3120 psi or 215 bar, very nearly twice the safe working pressure. So, just to repeat, this stuff's absolutely fine for fuel lines. For brakes, doing an emergency stop, sudden peak of pressure, that's the point you really don't want a line to fail. So, I'm going to put this one back, and I'm going to stick with the cupronickel for now. So, always put the ends back on. We need a piece of cupronickel that is about that long, so we're going to need to cut that. Now, the little pipe cutter I mentioned earlier will come in most flaring kits. It's mine. This is what we're going to be using in the next video. Just use a little pipe cutter just to get us by. So, very rough sizing again on the actual pipe. You can trim it down to size afterwards with these little cutters. You just unwind it, hook it on to the roller until it's tight, wind it round, and if you can see that, scoring the pipe there. Tighten it up, turn it round, tighten it up, turn it round, and basically just keep going with that. Be patient, don't force it. I would say certainly with this exercise it's useful to give yourself a little bit of extra length on both ends, just in case you need to redo something. Most commonly you'll forget to put a fitting on, do a perfect flare, and then have to trim the end off to redo the flare. It will happen to you, but maybe make yourself a little checklist. Right, the rest of this cunifer can go back, just to make sure it doesn't corrode in any way, shape or form, and to make sure that the end's nice and clean. Putting the plastic cap back on, that can go back in the stack. So, next job is to bend it, and the thing we need to remember when bending it is that the bends aren't just in one plane, they go all over the place. You can see with this one it's bending around all over the shop. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually use the old pipe as a template. Now what you can do is you can measure it and mark the position of the corners and all that nonsense. Don't need to, life's too short for that. So what we're going to be doing here is we'll be using a little pipe bender. Here we go, seamless piece of editing there. This is a 3-in-1 brake pipe bender. It cost me £10.99, that is $14.11 at the time of recording the video. It does 3 sizes of pipe, 3mm, 4.75mm and 6mm, and that gives us a huge advantage because it means that we have a slot here that's 6mm that we can use for our original pipe and use it as a template. So that allows us very easily to then slot the pipe that we're bending, the 3/16, the 4.75mm pipe, in the middle and simply follow the curves, which is what we will be doing. I'll pop a link to this in the description down below. It should be ever so easy to find. This one's a Tool Zone, I'm not sponsored in any way. Tool Zone Automotive, I would recommend this. Cheap, effective. Seamless bit of editing there. I have opened the door, a little bit more light in, and changed the camera angle so that you can see what's going on a little bit better. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to join together very loosely at the top, because we are going to need to rotate this round, the two bits of pipe. This is really rather more to hold them together relative to each other rather than to clamp them tight, so I'm going to be doing that quite loosely. The reason for that being I'm going to need to move the pipes from side to side as we go, but I don't want them to change position lengthwise. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use, as I mentioned before, this slot for the original piece, which is made of steel and very, very unlikely to bend accidentally, and the middle slot to actually bend the keeper nickel piece. So, allowing myself a bit of extra room at the end there. That's the disadvantage of having the door open. Allowing myself a bit of extra room for the flaring, which I'll cover in part 2. I'm going to line up the original and make sure that's nice and straight fitted into the corner there, pushed in tight, and then we're going to just use the tool to follow the original curve. That's it, nice and simple. First corner done. So now I need to make sure, and this is why this top end needs to be quite loose, I'm going to just rotate it round a bit, because remember that these corners go off in all sorts of different directions. I'll rotate it round a bit because this corner comes down and off by 45 degrees in 2 planes. So I've got the first corner done, rotate it round now, fit the second one into the tool, just goes in nice like that, fit the target piece into the middle slot, copy the corner. Sometimes have to flip sides as you're going to make sure you can get the whole thing done 2 corners down, and ready for the next one. So I'm just going to rattle on with this. This is a point where I'm going to need to change sides so that the guide piece is always on the right. So that's why it's so important at the top that we can rotate around. And again, this corner changes direction, comes off forwards at 45 degrees, just to be awkward. Now if you're trying to measure this with a ruler and so on, it gets awfully confusing. What's important is to make sure that the pieces just line up side by side. It doesn't have to be absolutely exact, but try that one again. It doesn't have to be absolutely exact, but it does have to be as close as you can get it. Otherwise you're going to have problems where you don't fit into your original clips. So pinch those together, bend it round. Another corner done there. Nice straight section now. Remember, always keeping the original on that side because it's going in the big slot, so that we don't accidentally bend our template. Same again. Slot them in. Slide it up to the corner, copy that corner, there's another one. Okay, once again going to have to just change sides because we're now going in the opposite direction. Drop it into the tool, slide it in nice and tight, make sure that the original corners line up. Copy that corner. Simples. One more to do here. This one comes forwards, so we're going to have to just rotate it a little bit. See the difference there? Again, because we're loose at the top. That's nice and easy. Reset the tool. Drop it in. Slide back the template to where it needs to be. Copy that corner. Now with this one I'm just going to have to flip it over here to be able to finish the bend. One last one comes forward at 45 degrees, so once again going to need to just rotate it round so that the template is in the correct slot. This one is going to be a little fiddly, I can tell. Easier if I reset the tool properly. Just make sure the original is in there. Make sure we're looking good enough on there. And come on, play nice. Copy that corner. Job done. Tear them apart. So we have 2 pieces of pipe, the old one, the new one, and enough room at both ends for the flaring tool. For that. Okay guys, hope that's been useful to you. If that has been useful, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in part 2. Cheers.